Hello fans! We'd love your support to the channel by like and share our videos so we can keep present more amazing stories. If you've watched all the previous parts of this story, you can find the new episode starting at this minute. Our story begins with 3 kidnappers and their captive. One of them hits the captive on the head, knocking him unconscious. Then, a girl arrives and tells them the boat is ready. They take the unconscious man onto the boat, sail to the middle of the lake, and throw him into the water with a bucket tied to his leg to keep him from surfacing. As he sinks, he cries for help, but no one hears him. Suddenly a voice echoes, asking, "Do you want to start a new life?" Shin, the kidnapped man, hears the voice and says he's ready to start a new life. The voice then asks him to choose the creature he wants to become, and a series of fish images appear before him. Shocked, Shin realizes he wants to remain human, but the voice goes silent. Left with no choice, Shin randomly selects a fish, and his body begins to transform into a base. The story then flashes back, revealing that one of Shin's co-workers had invited him on a fishing trip. However, it was all a betrayal. His co-worker had hired the kidnappers to throw Shin into the lake so he could take his job and get promoted. Shin, still in shock and struggling to believe what just happened, suddenly sees a system window appear before him. It tells him that if he becomes the ruler of the lake, he can wish for anything he desires. He's granted 2 skills, sensitive detection and speed. While trying to process everything, Shin wonders if he's dreaming. To test it, he slams his head into a rock. The impact knocks him unconscious, leaving him temporarily paralyzed. Meanwhile, the fish around him mock him, laughing at his ridiculous attempt to prove reality. Shin sees another system window pop up, giving him his first mission, to eat until his fullness level reaches a certain point. Confused, he wonders what he's supposed to eat now. He starts thinking about what base fish typically eat. At the same time, he glances at the earlier message, reminding him that becoming the ruler of the lake will grant him a wish. Realizing that wish could turn him back into a human, Shin feels a surge of hope and excitement, thinking there's still a chance to return to his old life. Though he finds the situation ridiculous, he decides he has nothing to lose by trying. Soon he spots a group of prey nearby and assumes they're meant to be his food. Shin quickly swims toward a prey to eat it, but just as he gets close, another fish darts in and snatches it away. He notices this happens every time he approaches prey. Another fish always beats him to it. Frustrated, he keeps trying again and again, but each time, a different fish steals his meal. Finally, he spots a prey with no other fish around and rushes toward it, thinking this is his chance. But just before he can eat it, another fish appears out of nowhere and takes it. Exhausted and starving, Shin feels defeated, standing still in the water like he's given up. Suddenly, 3 fish gather around him, mistaking him for dead and preparing to eat him. Overwhelmed with fear, Shin panics and quickly moves, desperate to escape before they devour him. Shin looks behind him and notices a massive swarm of fish heading straight toward him. Terrified, he assumes they're coming to eat him and starts swimming as fast as he can to escape. But then, he notices another group of fish suddenly appear and devour the ones chasing him. When he looks back again, he sees an even larger group of predatory fish closing in. At that moment, Shin realizes what's happening. The fish chasing him were actually fleeing from their own predators. Just as he processes this, he notices one of the predators locking onto him. Panicked, Shin tries to swim away, but his exhaustion slows him down. Despite his best efforts, the predator keeps gaining on him, relentlessly chasing him through the water. While Shin is fleeing, he glances back and notices a giant fish. To his shock, the massive fish devours the predator that was chasing him. Relieved, Shin thanks his luck for narrowly escaping. But when he looks to his side, he realizes the giant fish is now coming after him. Panicking, Shin swims as fast as he can to get away. However, to his surprise, the giant fish suddenly calls out to him. Confused, Shin stops in his tracks as the massive creature approaches. Instead of attacking, the giant fish speaks, asking Shin to protect her child. At that moment, Shin recalls a memory from his previous life. He and his wife were sitting in a restaurant when she asked him if he regretted marrying her. Surprised, Shin paused and asked her what she meant. She explained that she always felt like a burden to someone as busy as him, as he was constantly working and rarely had time to spend with her. Shin looked at her and admitted that he knew he was busy, but he couldn't find a way to spend more time with her. He then asked if she was feeling overwhelmed by housework and offered to hire someone to help her. Before the conversation could go any further, a loud noise snapped Shin out of his thoughts. It was the giant fish, repeating her plea for him to protect her child. However, Shin, still lost in his own emotions and memories, ignores the fish's request and swims away, leaving her behind. Shin Shin, still shaken from his near-death experience, decides to open the system window to gather information about the environment he's in. He realizes he needs to understand his surroundings better if he wants to survive, especially after almost being eaten earlier. As he looks around, he notices a group of small fish swimming nearby. Relieved, he assumes they're harmless and not a threat to him. However, when he glances to his side again, he spots two fish about the same size as him. Unsure of their species, Shin grows cautious and wonders if these two might be predators that could target him. Shin opens the system window again and checks the skills he currently has. He notices a skill called Eating Skill, which is at level 1. This skill allows him to steal one skill from any fish he eats, essentially letting him acquire the abilities of his prey. Realizing how useful this could be, Shin feels a glimmer of hope. However, he's reminded of his current predicament. He still hasn't managed to eat anything yet. As he continues exploring his skills, he notices another one called Danger Sense. This skill enables him to detect enemies, whether they're nearby or even at a distance. Shin acknowledges how valuable this skill could be for survival, especially in such a hostile environment. With these skills in mind, he starts thinking about how to use them to his advantage. But his hunger remains a pressing issue. When Shin activates the Danger Sense skill, his vision changes, and he notices that the fish around him are marked with different colors. Fish marked with blue are allies, meaning they are predators of his predators and could potentially protect him. Fish marked with yellow are neutral. They are neither allies nor enemies. Shin realizes the significance of this system. Blue fish could help him survive, while yellow fish are harmless unless provoked. However, as he looks around, he spots a fish marked in red. The red mark indicates danger. This fish is a direct threat to him. The red-marked fish is following closely behind him, and Shin hears it muttering about how hungry it is. Alarmed, Shin looks ahead and notices another fish marked in red. As he scans his surroundings further, he sees more and more red-marked fish appearing, all of them predators and potential threats. The sheer number of red-marked fish makes Shin's heart race, and he realizes he's surrounded by danger. Hunger and exhaustion aside, he knows he must act quickly to survive. Shin considers attacking the red-marked fish following him, but he hesitates, thinking, if I attack it, others of its kind might gang up on me, and I'll end up being their meal instead. Deciding it's too risky, he keeps moving cautiously until he finds a spot free of enemies. In this new area, Shin notices a variety of creatures, all marked as level 0. Excitement fills him as he realizes he's finally found a safe source of food. This is it, I finally found my meal, he thinks, rushing toward one of the level 0 creatures. With little effort, he successfully devours it, and his eating skill activates, granting him 1 XP. Feeling a surge of hope, Shin says to himself, I can eat all the prey here without any interference. This is perfect. But just as he's about to continue his feast, he glances behind him and freezes. 3 fish are approaching him, and they're not marked as harmless. Shin's heart sinks as he realizes his safe haven might not be so safe after all. Shin quickly moves, ignoring the approaching danger, and begins devouring as many of the level 0 prey as he can. Each time he eats, his eating skill activates, granting him XP and slightly replenishing his energy. However, as he's focused on eating, his danger sense skill suddenly triggers, warning him of an imminent threat. When he looks back, his heart sinks. There's a massive fish heading straight for him, its intent clear. It wants to eat him. Without hesitation, Shin activates his speed skill and darts away as fast as he can. Despite his best efforts, the giant fish continues to chase him relentlessly. As if things couldn't get worse, another predator fish appears, joining the pursuit. Shin's panic grows as he realizes he's being hunted by multiple predators. Suddenly, the system sends him a message. Warning, energy levels critically low. Shin feels his body slowing down, exhaustion creeping in, but he refuses to give up. Desperate, he spots a blue-marked ally fish in the distance and makes a beeline toward it. As soon as he reaches the ally fish, the predators chasing him abruptly stop in their tracks. They hover at a distance, unwilling to come any closer. Shin realizes why. The ally fish is a predator of his predators. If they get too close, the ally fish will attack and devour them. Breathing heavily, Shin finally feels a moment of relief. He silently thanks the system for guiding him to safety and the ally fish for unintentionally protecting him. For now, he's safe, but he knows he'll need to grow stronger if he wants to survive in this dangerous world. Shin decides to go hunting again, but waits for the predator fish to leave first. Meanwhile, a fisherman arrives at the lake where Shin lives. The fisherman spots Shin's ally fish and thinks, an easy catch, as he prepares to reel it in. At the same time, Shin completes his first mission, causing him to grow slightly and reach level 2. Curious, he wonders, did I really get bigger? But notices no significant difference. Suddenly, a system notification pops up, informing him that he has gained something called Memory of Another. Confused, Shin asks himself, what's this? And clicks on it to find out. He suddenly realizes he's turned human again and sees his wife sitting in front of him. Thinking he's back to his normal life, he tries to talk to her, but she doesn't hear him. That's when he notices that only he can see her, but she can't see him. Then, he overhears her mother asking about her daughter and her husband, Shin. She replies that he's busy and couldn't come home because of work. Shin starts walking, but after a short distance, he realizes he's turned back into a fish. Confused, he wonders what's happening and thinks these memories must be showing him glimpses of his old life. Suddenly, he receives a system message saying his body has grown larger and now requires more food to survive. He needs to eat until he reaches a certain point. Wondering where to find these points, Shin begins searching for prey. After some time, he spots a level 1 prey, which is better than level 0. He quickly attacks and eats it, gaining 1 point. As Shin looks back, he notices a level 4 fish coming straight for him. Panicking, he uses his speed skill to escape, but soon realizes an entire school of level 4 fish is chasing him. He keeps swimming as fast as he can, but every time he looks back, they're still on his tail. Eventually, he finds himself face to face with a level 1 fish, only to see the level 4 and level 3 predators closing in behind him. Exhausted, he keeps moving, but no matter where he goes, they keep following. Finally, he stops, completely drained, as one of the predators is about to devour him. At that moment, his allied fish appears and takes down the predator. This allied fish has its own territory, where any enemy fish that enters is either eaten or killed. For Shin, this is the safest place to be. He notices the predator that was about to eat him is now dead. Taking a moment to rest, Shin checks his stats, but when he looks back again, he sees another predator approaching. Without hesitation, he quickly moves away from the fish. Shin realizes he needs to level up quickly because the stronger he gets, the more he becomes a hunter rather than prey. It's also revealed that fish of his kind prey on each other if they're at different levels. Level 2 eats level 1, and level 3 eats level 2. The fish that was about to eat Shin eventually leaves, and Shin notices a fishing hook nearby. At first, he mistakes it for an allied fish and thinks it's there to help him, but as he focuses, he realizes it's actually a hook. Looking up, he spots a fisherman and decides he needs to leave immediately. However, the fisherman isn't targeting Shin, as he's too small to be worth catching. Instead, the fisherman is after bigger fish, like Shin's allied fish that protects the territory. Suddenly, another fish sneaks up behind Shin and bites his tail, trying to eat him. Shin struggles to escape and swims as fast as he can toward his allied fish for help, but the predator keeps holding on to him. At the same time, Shin notices his allied fish heading straight for the fisherman's bait. Desperate to warn her, Shin shouts and tries to get her attention, but she doesn't hear him. She swims toward the bait and ends up swallowing it. When the allied fish swallows the bait, Shin tries to warn her again, but it's too late. The fisherman realizes a fish has taken the bait and starts reeling her in. The allied fish is dragged closer to the shore, unable to escape. At the same time, Shin is still struggling to escape the predator chasing him. Just as the predator is about to swallow him whole, Shin uses his speed skill to escape at the last second. However, he immediately receives a system message saying his speed skill has been deactivated because he hasn't eaten yet. Now exhausted and vulnerable, Shin notices the predator is still chasing him, determined to eat him. He keeps moving as fast as he can, but the predator relentlessly follows close behind. The system keeps sending Shin warnings that he'll soon be unable to move. Desperate, he keeps running and tells himself he must find food immediately. He spots a level 1 prey and rushes toward it, but before he can eat it, the predator chasing him catches up and strikes him. Shin falls and pretends to be dead. Just as the predator is about to eat him, he suddenly dashes toward the prey. However, before he can reach it, another fish grabs him. Shin knows this prey is crucial because he's currently level 2, and eating it will make him level 3. At level 3, the predator chasing him will no longer see him as prey and won't be able to harm him. While the second fish is biting into him, Shin struggles to eat the prey. With great effort, he finally manages to swallow it, leveling up and growing larger. The predator notices the change and realizes Shin is now the same level as her. At this point, Shin decides to attack the predator using his eating skill, even though they are now equally strong. This puts him at great risk, but he relentlessly attacks her over and over. Their intense fight attracts 3 higher-level fish nearby. Meanwhile, Shin is on the verge of defeating the predator, who is now severely weakened and unconscious. His danger sense kicked in, alerting him to nearby predators. Turning around, he spotted level 9 and 10 fish closing in, while the safety zone was still far out of reach. The protection area was no longer safe, as the fish guarding it had died. Still, Shane decided to head there, drawn by the abundance of fish in the area. He sprinted toward it, using the unconscious fish to distract the others during his escape. As he ran, he noticed another fish watching him. Seemingly relieved that Shane wasn't one of its predators, Shane kept fleeing, weaving between rocks to avoid being eaten as he made his way to the fish area. Along the way, he spotted 2 distant level 2 fish and prayed they wouldn't notice him. He dashed to another spot, finally reaching a narrow space between 2 rocks that felt safe. But just as he caught his breath, he realized another fish had already spotted him. Shane continues toward the fish area when he spots a bottle and considers hiding inside it. Seeing 2 large fish swimming above, he quickly slips into the bottle for safety. Sitting inside, he can't help but reflect on the irony. Once a successful CEO, now reduced to hiding from fish in a bottle. Shane decides to rest inside the bottle and falls asleep. When he wakes up, he checks his stats, curious about his next mission. He notices 6 new notifications, one revealing he's gained a skill called boss fighting, and another stating he's the 6th survivor, confirming that others have also been turned into fish. A player versus player mode suddenly activates, leaving Shane confused as he stares at the notifications. Curious, he opens the boss fighting skill, only to find strange, unreadable writing. Moments later, a new mission appears. Defeat the area boss, become the leader, eliminate all survivors, and become the sole survivor. Puzzled by the term sole survivor, he realizes there must be 5 others like him. Shane realizes that as his level increases, so does his size. He sets his sights on either defeating the boss or eliminating all survivors. While he considers the possibility of forming alliances with the other survivors, he also acknowledges the risk. One of them might think differently and aim to eliminate everyone, including him. Examining the boss fighting skill, Shane spots phrases like blue area and evil destroyer, realizing that all the bosses are nearby. Hearing a noise outside, he decides to leave the bottle. Once outside, he sees large fish attacking the area, taking advantage of the absence of the region's protector. Shane considers retreating back into the bottle, but notices a massive school of blue fish nearby. He realizes the predators won't be able to eat all of them, giving him a chance to move unnoticed. As Shane moves to join the school of fish, he hears a voice call out to him. It's the same fish that had spotted him earlier among the rocks. Startled and frightened, Shane quickly retreats into the bottle, assuming it's a predator. However, he realizes the fish had said, "Hello," hinting it might be one of the 6 survivors. While he's still pondering, the fish enters the bottle. Shane notices it can speak and is at level 8, and for a moment, he panics, thinking it came to eat him. Shane, still wary, asks the fish who it is. The fish explains that it saw him earlier, followed him, and noticed Shane's name, Leoshin, written above him. It then asks, "Are you human too?" Shane feels a spark of happiness at finding another human, but keeps a stern expression, cautiously asking what the fish wants. The fish, excited, says it's going to enter the bottle, which frightens Shane. "Don't come in," he warns sharply. The fish, undeterred, expresses joy at finding another human, but Shane quickly hushes it, warning that its noise could attract predators. As Shane feared, the noise had already attracted predators. He continues speaking to the fish, urging it to leave immediately. The fish, looking disappointed, agrees to leave if that's what Shane wants. Watching it swim away, Shane begins planning his escape, intending to slip away unnoticed as soon as the fish exits the bottle. The fish gets stuck in the bottle's mouth, flailing its fins. Shane, frustrated and nervous, asks, "How did you even get stuck?" The fish explains its fins are caught and pleads with Shane to push it out. Shane hesitates, fearing it might eat him once freed. The fish reassures him, but its shaking causes the bottle to wobble dangerously, nearly tipping over. With no other choice, Shane reluctantly agrees to help. He counts to 3, activates his speed skill, and pushes the fish out with all his strength. The force causes the bottle to move and fall, rolling uncontrollably, with Shane still inside. When the bottle finally stops, Shane receives a system message. "You have entered the blue boss's cell." Heart pounding, Shane exits the bottle and looks around. The dim, eerie space is littered with strange objects, including a cluster of eggs on the ground. Before he can process what's happening, he notices a massive, terrifying fish standing before him, the blue boss. Panicking, Shane decides to retreat back into the bottle, hoping it will protect him. However, the blue boss immediately attacks, slamming into the bottle with immense force. Shane watches in horror as his health begins to drop with each hit, the vibrations rattling him inside. The bottle starts rolling uncontrollably, pushed by the blue boss's relentless assault, with the massive fish chasing it. Shane can't help but wonder how he ended up in such a dire situation. Amid the chaos, a system message appears before him. First encounter with the blue boss, giant blue dome fish. The notification confirms the terrifying reality of the creature before him, its massive size and power making escape seem impossible. The blue boss slams into the bottle, then suddenly swims away. Curious but cautious, Shane peeks out, only for the massive fish to charge back and strike again. Heart pounding, Shane remembers what he knows about this species. It devours anything smaller than itself. Suddenly, the blue boss peers into the bottle, its massive eye staring directly at Shane, sending a chill down his spine. Terrified, Shane decides to stay inside, trusting the plastic bottle to be unbreakable. He reasons that the fish is likely protecting its eggs and might eventually tire from pushing the bottle, giving him a chance to escape later. After some time, Shane cautiously looks out again, only to find the blue boss still waiting. Panicking, he uses a cyclone-like skill, twisting the bottle and sending it flying through the water. The blue boss quickly follows, finding Shane unconscious inside. When Shane wakes up, the relentless fish is attacking the bottle again. A sinking realization hits him. If this continues, he might die before the blue boss tires out, even if he uses his skill again. As the blue boss nearly shatters the bottle with its relentless attacks, Shane realizes he has to act fast. He decides to escape during the next strike. Watching closely, he waits as the fish prepares to use the same powerful skill. The moment the bottle bends under the force of the attack, Shane activates his speed skill and darts out, leaving the bottle behind. The blue boss immediately chases after him, but Shane pushes forward, hoping to lose the massive predator once he leaves its territory. Just as freedom seems within reach, the boss uses a suction skill, pulling Shane back despite his incredible speed. Refusing to give up, Shane continues using his speed skill, desperately trying to escape the fish's grasp. The blue boss suddenly uses a domination skill, and a system warning flashes before Shane, alerting him to the danger. Looking ahead, he notices several fish gathering around him, their movements unnatural. It hits him. The blue boss can control other fish. Realizing he's outnumbered and outmatched, Shane makes a desperate decision. He plays dead once again, hoping to fool the predator and its minions. The fish that had been trapped with Shane in the bottle slowly regains consciousness, confused and wondering where Shane has gone. Before it can figure things out, it notices a giant fish approaching, ready to devour it. Panicking, the small fish activates a skill, releasing an intense blinding light. The sudden flash stuns the giant fish and causes the other nearby fish to lose consciousness, giving the little fish a chance to escape. The small fish, determined to find Shane, swims back and spots him being attacked by 3 predatory fish. Shane, using his speed skill, darts away from his attackers, narrowly avoiding their strikes. He keeps fleeing until he notices a fishing net in the distance. Thinking quickly, Shane decides to enter the net, hoping to lure the predatory fish inside after him. Just as Shane prepared to execute his plan, his sensor alerted him to a nearby threat. Turning to his side, he saw a massive fish surrounded by a swarm of smaller fish. Without hesitation, Shane activated his speed skill to escape, but the large fish managed to injure him, causing him to bleed and his health to drop rapidly. Desperate, Shane pretended to faint, luring the fish closer. The moment it approached, Shane made his move, using his remaining strength to dash toward the fishing net and slip inside. The fish surrounded the net, closing in on Shane. Spotting a fishing hook nearby, he grabbed it and threatened to strike any fish that came too close. One fish dared to enter, and Shane readied himself to attack. But before he could, more fish began swarming into the net. As one fish tried to approach, Shane quickly stabbed its eye with the hook. The fish thrashed wildly in pain, and Shane muttered that it had forced him to do it. By now, the net was packed with fish, all closing in around him. The boss noticed a strange light coming from the net and saw all the fish moving toward it. Curious, he decided to investigate. Meanwhile, as the second fish lay unconscious on the ground, Shane quickly tried to help it, knowing they wouldn't survive if he didn't act. When the fish regained consciousness, it told Shane to wake the others gently if he wanted to revive them. Confused, Shane asked who it was and why it had come. The fish, shocked by his response, replied that it had come to help him and scolded him for not even saying thank you. Shane asked the fish how it had produced the light earlier. The fish explained that it was a skill it possessed. Shane thanked it for coming to save him, and the fish replied it was no problem. It then explained that the light could have made Shane faint like the other fish, which was why it had tried to pull him away at first. The fish introduced itself as Park, 24 years old. Shane introduced himself, mentioning he was in his 30s. Park suggested calling him Mr. Shane, but Shane shrugged and said she could call him whatever she wanted. She then told him it was lucky she found him there, as she hadn't expected to encounter any humans. She added that it was good he appeared on her warning screen. Curious, Shane asked, "What warning screen?" Park explained that she had a warning system that alerted her whenever a survivor was nearby. It also notified her if a survivor was fighting a boss. That's how she knew he was in trouble, so she came and found him surrounded by fish. She used her skill to save him just in time. Shane wondered if all survivors had received the same alert when he went to fight the boss. If so, it meant they could be hiding nearby. He hoped they would choose cooperation over competition in this dangerous situation. Meanwhile, a crab was hiding nearby, silently observing. Shane continued talking to the fish, saying that humans always follow their greed, so they would likely choose competition over cooperation. However, as he spoke, his mind wandered elsewhere. Noticing his distraction, the fish asked why he wasn't responding. Shane snapped back and admitted he was a bit confused, then asked what she had been talking about. The fish changed the subject and asked why he had entered the net where all the fish were gathering around him. Shane explained that his energy was depleted, and he was just trying to escape from the boss in any way he could. The fish asked if the boss was the one with the X mark who had been watching them from afar. She mentioned how terrifying he looked and wondered aloud if they would actually die in reality if the boss ate them. Shane replied that they would be fighting this monster soon. He explained that the boss had two dangerous skills, one that created a tornado and another that summoned all fish of its kind. He added that their mission was to eliminate the monster. The fish asked what they would do next, pointing out that eliminating the boss would be very difficult. She suggested waiting for other survivors to arrive and help. Shane shook his head and explained that his eating skill allowed him to acquire the skill of any prey he devoured, as long as the prey had a skill. If he managed to eat the boss, he would gain one of its abilities. But the problem was that the skill he acquired would be random. He added that waiting for other survivors could also be risky because they wouldn't know about his plan, and their interference might complicate things further. Shane proposed an idea and asked if she would be willing to help him. The fish agreed, saying she would do whatever she could to assist. He then told her that his strongest weapon at the moment was his experience as a fisherman, though he admitted with a sheepish grin that in real life, he had only gone fishing once. Shane asked her how she ended up here. The fish hesitated for a moment before explaining that she had been kidnapped by her neighbor, who was taking her to a mountainous place. She managed to escape from the car and ran along the mountain path, though she had no plan and couldn't find a place to hide. Just as her neighbor was about to catch her, it started raining, and she slipped, falling into a lake. That was the moment she transformed into the way Shane saw her now. She added that she didn't like talking about this story and quickly changed the subject, asking about his story and how he became like this. Shane sighed and told her that one of his work colleagues had betrayed him. The colleague had lured him onto a boat under false pretenses and then thrown him into the sea, leaving him to drown. While they were talking, Shane suddenly heard a strange sound. He quickly motioned for the fish to be quiet and whispered that a big fish, a level 17 predator, was swimming above them. He explained that the real fear in the sea came from the fish that moved every night, and he had seen this one before. If it spotted them, they would undoubtedly become its prey. The fish whispered back, "Luckily, it didn't see us." But as she spoke, her voice carried through the water, catching the attention of the big fish. Its massive body turned toward them, and with a sudden burst of speed, it began to attack. "Run!" Shane shouted, and both he and the fish darted away, desperately trying to escape the predator's pursuit. As they fled, Shane thought to himself that the fish was of no use to him. Ever since he had met her, trouble seemed to follow him everywhere. He began to wonder if it might be better to throw her as bait and use the distraction to escape. But just as this thought crossed his mind, he noticed something unexpected. The fish was using her light skill. A bright, dazzling glow emanated from her, and the monster chasing them suddenly stopped and lost consciousness. However, there was a problem. Shane also lost consciousness from the effect of the light. When he finally came to, the fish was nudging him awake, urging him to move quickly. "Come on, we need to hide," she said, pulling him toward a group of rocks where they could take cover. Still groggy, Shane followed her, realizing that she might be more useful than he had initially thought. As they walked, Shane remained silent the entire way. The fish eventually broke the silence, asking, "Are you still angry?" "I'm not angry," Shane replied curtly, but the fish insisted, "Yes, you are. But you know what? I don't care anymore." She huffed and then suddenly fell to the ground, saying, "Let's take a break. My foot hurts." Shane raised an eyebrow and reminded her, You don't even have feet." Ignoring her protests, he grabbed her and pulled her along, urging her to keep moving. As they continued, the fish asked, "Where are we even going? What's the plan now?" Shane explained, "In spring, a fish called the koshkush swims to the springs to spawn. When that happens, predators of this fish, the blue dome fish, follow them. And then, fishermen gather to catch the dome fish." The fish tilted her head, curious. "So, what does that have to do with us?" Shane smirked slightly. "You'll see." The fish asked Shane, "How much longer until we get there?" He replied, "We're already here. This area is going to be the best spot for fishing." At the same time, a group of fishermen nearby had already thrown their hooks into the water, hoping to catch domefish. One of the fishermen noticed his float moving and exclaimed, "It must be a fish!" But when he pulled the hook out of the water, he realized the bait was gone. This kept happening each time he reeled in the hook. Movement on the float, but no fish and no bait. His family members, who were watching nearby, started mocking him. "You said you had 30 years of fishing experience," one of them teased, "and now you can't even catch a single fish." The fisherman grumbled in frustration, determined to prove them wrong. Shane was busy stealing bait from the hooks, expertly removing it without getting caught. He turned to the fish and whispered, "Go on. Eat some too." She hesitated but eventually followed his lead. Noticing the countless hooks loaded with bait, Shane grinned. "This will last us a long time," he said. The fish, now eagerly eating, replied, "Then I'd better eat as much as I can." After eating a large amount of bait, Shane suddenly stopped and frowned. "This bait tastes bad," he muttered. Then a memory hit him. Korea had created fish farms to raise bass, the very type of fish he had become. He remembered that they used to throw this kind of bait into the water to feed the bass and make them grow to massive sizes. After turning into a fish, Shane realized something strange. Bass usually only eat live prey and completely refuse to eat bait like this. He wondered how the bass in the fish farms grew so large when their bodies wouldn't accept this type of food. Just then, Shane received a message from the system. He had earned 5 points for eating the bait. His eyes lit up, and he immediately changed his mind. "This bait is great," he said, continuing to eat it enthusiastically. Turning to the fish beside him, he added, "We need to eat as much of this bait as possible if we want to grow stronger." As he devoured more bait, Shane's level began to rise steadily, eventually reaching level 4. But after a while, he groaned, "I can't eat any more of this stuff." Meanwhile, the fish with him had also been eating and had increased her level to an impressive level 9. Shane turned to the fish and said, "When the sun rises, a large number of fish will wake up. They'll start feeding on the bait and even on live fish. I need to get stronger before that happens." As he looked ahead, Shane noticed a fishing net nearby. A fisherman was talking to his son, saying, "Fishing teaches patience. You need to be patient." But the boy, clearly frustrated, replied, "I just want to go home." The father sighed and tried to reassure him, "Be patient. Once we're done fishing, we'll barbecue the fish and then head home." The boy crossed his arms and grumbled, "We've been sitting here since morning, and we haven't caught a single fish." The father explains to his son that the rope is tied to a crab trap, and if they fail to catch fish, they can take the crab instead. Inside the trap, Shane finds level 3 crabs. He enters the net, realizing they're perfect for boosting his level quickly. After eating 4 crabs, his level jumps to 5. To his surprise, the more he eats, the more crabs appear. Meanwhile, the fish swims to the surface of the lake, watching the fisherman as he prepares to leave with the net. She overhears the fisherman's daughter asking her father if he caught any fish and about her brother. The father replies that her brother is in his room, though in truth he's checking the crab net. Realizing Shane is inside the net, the fish hurries to warn him, but a large crab suddenly attacks her on the way. By now, Shane had reached level 6 and decided to keep eating until he hit level 10 or higher. The fish finally reaches him and urgently warns him to leave the net immediately, as it's about to be pulled up. As the fish warns Shane, a sudden laser beam strikes her, causing her to bleed. Shane quickly spots the crab that attacked her earlier, Jijong, a level 13 crab. The fish collapses to the ground as Jijong moves closer, ready to eat her. Still inside the net, Shane hesitates and decides not to leave, realizing that if he does, the powerful crab will likely eat him too. The net begins to shake as the fisherman's son starts pulling it up. Realizing he must escape quickly, Shane frantically searches for a way out but finds no exit. While searching, he notices Jijong moving closer to the injured fish to eat her. Desperate, Shane shouts for the fish to escape, but she remains motionless on the ground, unable to move. The crab approaches the fish, activating a cutting skill that makes its claw glow and grow larger. The fish struggles but manages to move to a distant spot. The crab charges after her, but she dodges its attack, causing it to slam into a rock behind her. Seizing the moment, the fish activates her light skill, emitting a powerful glow meant to intimidate the crab and drive it away. At this moment, the boy pulls up the net with Shane inside. Shane hopes the child will throw him back into the water. However, the boy takes the net to his father, excitedly telling him there's a fish inside. The father identifies it as a bass, calling it a bad type of fish he doesn't want. He tells the boy to throw it back, but the child insists on keeping it. The father, confused by his determination, warns him about rumors that this type of fish brings bad luck. Despite this, the boy refuses to let it go, and the father eventually gives in, telling him to do as he wishes. Shane is left stunned by the situation. The child excitedly runs off to fetch a container to keep Shane in. Returning with the container, he approaches the net, carefully reaching in to take Shane out and place him inside. Shane watches nervously, unsure of what will happen next. Meanwhile, the fish had managed to distance herself from the crab, but fear still gripped her as she worried it might return to attack her again. Overwhelmed by her situation, she began to cry, reflecting on everything that had happened and thinking about Shane, unsure of what to do next. Suddenly, she heard a sound and froze. Her worst fear had come true. The crab had returned. She quickly hid behind a rock, hoping it wouldn't see her, but the crab's sharp eyes caught sight of her fin peeking out. Without hesitation, it activated its cutting skill, its glowing claw slashing toward her. The attack landed, seriously injuring her and causing her to collapse to the ground. As the crab approached her, ready to finish her off, she weakly asked, "Why are you doing this? You're human like me. Shouldn't we be working together instead of fighting?" The crab stops in its tracks for a moment, glaring at the injured fish. It replies coldly, "You're talking nonsense. Cooperation means nothing to me. If I can eliminate the 5 survivors, I can become human again." The crab activates its cutting skill once more, its glowing claw raised as it charges toward the injured fish to finish her off. Desperate, she pleads, "Stop. If we cooperate and defeat the bosses, we can both become human again." But the crab remains unmoved, its determination unwavering. "Why won't you listen to me?" The crab sneers, lunging forward to strike her. In that moment of desperation, the fish summons all her strength and activates her light skill, which has now evolved to level 2. A powerful beam of light bursts forth, brighter and stronger than before, striking the crab directly. Back with Shane, his health was deteriorating as the child carefully removed him from the net and placed him into a container. Feeling his strength fading, Shane knew he had to act quickly. Summoning what little energy he had left, he activated his speed skill, attempting to leap out of the container and escape. However, in his haste, he collided with the child's sister, who had just entered the room. The impact sent him tumbling to the ground. Dazed but determined, Shane tried to escape again, flopping toward the nearest exit. Just as he thought he might make it, the fisherman's son appeared and stepped on his tail, pinning him to the ground. In the lake, the fish continued her fight against the crab, unleashing a powerful light beam that severed its claws and 4 of its legs, leaving it with only 1 leg and 1 hand. Staring at the crab, she thought to herself how powerful this skill was, and how it could help them survive in this place. She stepped in front of the injured crab and demanded to know why it was attacking the other survivors. The crab sneered, calling her an annoying fish, and asked how she met the one trapped in the net. It mocked her, saying one of them would have betrayed the other eventually to survive, and called Shane weak. The fish glared at the crab and said, "I'll let you go this time, but if I get another chance, I won't hesitate to finish you off." Before it departs, she poses one final question. Why didn't it choose to cooperate so they could all survive together? It responds by asking if she's certain that all survivors share her perspective. She falls silent, offering no reply. It then questions whether she's sure that defeating the bosses will restore their humanity, suggesting that the one who defeats the final boss might desire to become human alone. It asks if she's certain she would give her wish to someone she shouldn't trust. The fish remains silent for a moment before replying that not all humans are evil. Just as there are bad people, there are good ones too. It assures her that she will change her mind when she encounters the final boss. Then, using a deep digging skill, it creates a large hole and disappears underground. Meanwhile, the fisherman's family sits down for dinner. Inside the container, Shane struggles to break free but eventually gives up and decides to wait for the child to come and open it. He waits for a long time, but the child never arrives. On the TV, a news report covers the disappearance of the Saisung Group's CEO, Shane himself. The report reveals that a suicide note was found in his office, stating he had been suffering from depression and stress due to work pressures. His health had worsened in recent days, and while the police are actively searching for his body, they have yet to find it. The child entered the room and looked at the container where Shane was trapped. Shane contemplated how to get the child to throw him back into the lake and decided to pretend to be dead. As he lay still, the child noticed him and began to think about what to do next. We then return to the person who betrayed Shane, still on the phone with the girl. He claims that Shane is his close friend and assures her that he will continue searching for him and will find him eventually. The girl expresses a desire to meet him, and he replies that he'll check his schedule to arrange a meeting time. Meanwhile, the fisherman's son continued to watch Shane, sensing that he might not be truly dead. He shook the container repeatedly, and Shane fought hard to remain motionless, knowing that any movement could cause the child to refuse to let him go. Eventually, the boy began to believe that Shane had actually died, so he started slamming the container against the ground. Shane struggled to stay still as the boy picked it up and noticed that Shane wasn't moving. The child declared that Shane had really died but decided to make one last attempt to confirm it. He began hitting the container hard against the ground repeatedly. Shane felt his health deteriorating and received a system warning indicating he was close to death. The child looked inside the container, hoping the fish hadn't died, and Shane felt a wave of relief when the boy finally stopped hitting it. Just then, the child's mother entered the room and asked if he was coming to eat, but he replied that he didn't want to. The child then took the container to his father, saying he wanted to grill the fish, which shocked Shane. The mother reminded him that he should have grilled it during the barbecue, but he had chosen to keep it instead. The child insisted that the fish had died and he wanted to see it grilled. She told him they were still eating, and if the fish was really dead, he should throw it away since it was small. The child agreed to throw it away, which made Shane feel relieved. The fisherman instructed his son to throw the fish far away. The boy opened the container and tossed Shane into the water. As soon as he hit the water, Shane swam quickly downwards, eager to find out what had happened to the fish. He dove deeper, calling out for her, but there was no response. As Shane scanned the ground beneath him, he noticed traces of laser beams etched into the lake bed. It dawned on him that a battle had taken place in this very spot, and he surmised that the crab he had encountered earlier must have attacked the fish. Since he couldn't find her anywhere, he concluded that the crab must have caught her during the chaos. Determined to uncover the truth, Shane began to search the area more thoroughly, determined not to give up. Suddenly, his danger-sensing skill activated, alerting him to a predatory fish nearby. When he glanced to his side, he spotted a large fish approaching, ready to eat him. This time, Shane decided to be brave. He activated his speed skill and darted toward the fish, striking it and causing it to become dizzy. Just as Shane felt victorious, another, even larger fish appeared and devoured the first one. It was a catfish, and Shane's heart raced with fear. Knowing how quick catfish could be, he took off swimming as fast as he could. The catfish lunged at him, trying to catch him in its jaws, but Shane managed to evade its attack. As Shane looked ahead, he spotted a large number of predatory fish feasting on other fish, some even larger than himself. Realizing he was in a dangerous situation, he quickly swam to hide behind a rock, using it as cover. From his hiding spot, he seized the opportunity to ambush one of the 3 passing fish. With a swift and calculated move, he caught one and quickly returned to his refuge behind the rock to avoid detection by the predators. This strategy allowed him to eat any fish that swam by, which would help him grow quickly and gain strength. While he was hidden, Shane noticed some fish in the distance, but they were too far away for him to reach without risking exposure. Shane opened the system window to check on the other survivors and realized they were stronger than him. This worried him, as being the weakest target could make him a target for elimination. Still, he believed his fishing skill would help him survive. He thought about the golden fish. If she were with him, she would have assisted him, but she must have died since she hadn't shown up. Shane reopened the system window to review his skills and selected the gluttony skill, which allowed him to acquire the abilities of any fish he ate, as long as the fish had skills. This reminded him of his time as a company CEO, where he often discussed team dynamics with his colleagues. Each team would blame the lower performing team for mistakes, ultimately placing the blame on the workers. He had proposed a new system to address this issue, but it ended up harming the workers even more, leading to their resentment toward him. However, he didn't care about their feelings. Back behind the rock, Shane reminded himself that he needed to eat any fish he could find to increase his strength and become stronger than the other survivors. He spotted some fish swimming by and recognized an opportunity to catch them, but his mind wandered and he missed his chance as the fish swam away. Suddenly, he received a system message informing him that he had obtained someone's memory and asking if he wanted to view it. Intrigued, Shane decided to watch it. Meanwhile, the golden fish was hiding between tree roots, ensuring no one could see her. As she glanced to her side, she spotted a large base fish nearby. As Shane began watching the memory, he saw his wife sitting with the person who had betrayed him. She asked about Shane, but the betrayer replied that he knew nothing about him. Anger surged within Shane at this response, and he felt the urge to strike the betrayer. However, he quickly remembered that he wasn't visible and could only watch the scene unfold. The betrayer, now the company president, asked Shane's wife if she was implying that he had killed Shane. She quickly clarified that she didn't mean to accuse him. He pressed her, asking if she had investigated him before making such accusations. She admitted she wasn't sure about him and asked where he was on the day Shane disappeared. He responded that it would be best for her to leave the area to avoid causing trouble for herself. With that, Shane's wife decided to leave. The president made a call to someone, and Shane recognized the voice on the other end. It was department head Cam. The betrayer asked Cam what he had done with Shane's phone. Cam replied that he hadn't done anything because he thought the president would handle it. The president was shocked by Cam's response and warned that the police would trace the phone and discover they had gotten rid of Shane. He pressed Cam for a solution to the problem. Cam assured him that he would try to find a way to resolve it. The president then added that Cam also needed to deal with Hyun, Shane's wife, as she was trying to investigate the matter. Hearing the conversation made Shane upset, and he feared for his wife's safety. In a fit of panic, he started screaming, which caught the president's attention. The president turned around, but saw no one. Suddenly, Shane found himself transformed back into a fish. A fish swam in front of him, and he quickly went to eat it. Determined, he decided to head to the blue boss's area. Once there, Shane stood in front of the blue boss, holding a fishing hook. He lunged at the blue boss with the hook, but to his shock, it had no effect. Stunned, he froze for a moment, and before he could react, the blue boss kicked him, sending Shane rolling until he crashed into a rock. The blue boss chased after Shane, who quickly realized he needed to escape. He told himself that any mistake could lead to his death. Finding a rock to hide behind, Shane prepared to ambush the blue boss with his fishing hook. As the blue boss approached, Shane sprang out and stabbed the hook between its eyes, tying the other end to a fallen tree trunk in an attempt to trap it and make his escape. However, the blue boss managed to break free and lunged at Shane once more. At this point, Shane's health was nearly depleted, and he found himself cornered as the blue boss stood before him, ready to attack again. Shane backed away, desperately searching for a way out. As Shane backed away, he spotted a fishing hook lying on the ground and decided to grab it, even though the blue boss was standing nearby. He quickly moved to retrieve the hook, but the blue boss noticed his movement and activated a whirlpool skill to attack him. Shane narrowly dodged the swirling water. With renewed determination, he focused on the X mark on the blue boss's head. Shane approached the blue boss and plunged the hook into the X mark on its head, holding his breath as he waited to see what would happen. However, to his dismay, nothing occurred. Instead, the blue boss activated its whirlpool skill once more, launching another attack at Shane. Realizing he needed to escape, Shane turned and ran toward the eggs that the blue boss had been guarding. He knew that if he could eat those eggs, his level would increase to 7, and his health would be fully restored. Meanwhile, the boss activated a domination skill, summoning a swarm of fish. Shane thought he was done for and quickly hid among the rocks to avoid being seen. The boss noticed Shane was missing and began searching for him but couldn't find him. Seizing the moment, Shane emerged with the hook and leaped into the boss's mouth to hook it from the inside. Shane repeatedly stabbed inside the boss's mouth, causing it to hit its head against the rocks in pain. Despite the struggle, Shane pressed on, stabbing until the boss started to bleed. Knowing he needed to get to the eggs before anyone arrived, he focused on his next move. As he continued his assault, exhaustion took over and Shane collapsed to the ground. A notification appeared, confirming that the blue boss had been defeated, along with a message that his mission would be updated to meet his wife. Meanwhile, Shane's wife stood by the lake where he had drowned, preparing to get into a boat with someone she didn't quite recognize. She wondered if she had seen this person before. Turning to the fisherman nearby, she asked if he had noticed anything unusual in the past 2 weeks. The fisherman shrugged, uninterested, and replied that he didn't care about such details. Frustrated, she decided to leave, but the person with her asked the fisherman to call if he learned anything. Before Before they left, the fisherman suddenly recalled that 3 people had come to the lake some time ago. He remembered that 2 of them had called the third boss and were dressed in formal attire. However, he had chosen to leave them alone to do his work. Curious, he then asked Shane's wife why she was inquiring about this. Back with Shane, he discovered he had received several rewards for defeating the blue boss, including a card that could strengthen any skill he possessed, along with additional rewards to be added later. Standing in front of the blue boss, he gazed at the eggs it had been guarding, realizing that eating them would allow him to advance 2 levels or more. As he moved to eat the eggs, he first examined the skill enhancement card. He had 2 options: delete one of his existing skills to acquire a new one, or improve a current skill. Shane reflected on how much better the skills of other survivors were compared to his own. Initially, he considered gaining a second skill, but after some thought, he decided to develop his gluttony skill instead. Shane received a message stating that if he preyed on any fish, he would gain half of its experience points, allowing him to level up quickly. He glanced at the blue boss and realized it would be even better to prey on it for experience points and skills. Determined, Shane approached the boss and began to eat it, consuming it completely. After finishing, a system message appeared, informing him that he had preyed on the blue boss and gained 2 new skills, Domination and Whirlpool, along with an increase in his level. Shane reminded himself that he still needed to eat the eggs to raise his level. However, before he could start, he heard someone calling his name. Turning around, he saw a fish approaching. The fish noticed the significant change in Shane's size. He had transformed into a large fish after preying on the boss. She asked how he had grown so big when she had left him smaller. Shane replied that he had defeated the blue boss. The fish mentioned that she had received a message about it, which was how she found him. Curious, she asked if he had defeated the boss alone, to which he confidently answered yes. Impressed, she told him he was amazing and asked how he had done it. Shane replied that he had a perfect plan. The fish then noticed the eggs and told Shane that she was injured and needed food. She asked if she could eat some of the eggs, but Shane, feeling much bigger and more powerful with his new skills, thought he didn't need her help anymore. He even wondered how much his level would increase if he ate her instead. Meanwhile, the fish began eating the eggs, and to her delight, her level rose from 9 to 11. The fish looked at Shane and expressed her relief that he was okay, saying she would have been very sad if he had died. Hearing this made Shane reconsider his earlier thoughts about eating her. He asked if she had seen any other survivors. She nodded and explained that she had tried to convince one to join them, but he had refused. She described how strong they were, noting that she had no chance of surviving their attacks. She had thought she would die, but managed to escape just in time. However, after fleeing, a large base fish had chased her, and she lost consciousness. When she woke up, she found that the base had fled. Shane replied, "It's good you're okay," feeling a sense of camaraderie with her. The fish asked Shane where the boss he defeated was, and he replied that he had preyed on it. She was shocked and asked how he could prey on something so huge and what skills he had gained from it. Shane shrugged, saying he didn't gain anything special. As they spoke, Shane glanced at his system and noticed that his mission had changed to meet Hyun, his wife. Without hesitation, he activated a speed skill and took off running to find her. The fish called out, asking where he was going, but Shane didn't respond, focused on reaching her before she left. The fish, determined to understand what was happening, followed him, calling for him to stop and explain. Shane turned back briefly and told her to follow him to the lake's surface. When they reached the surface, Shane spotted his wife, Hyun, and received a notification that he had completed his mission. She was calling out to him, reminding him that he had promised to return. Shane moved closer, trying to speak to her, but of course, she couldn't understand his fish language. The fish watched the interaction and asked Shane if this was his wife, but he didn't respond, continuing to call out to Hyun. The fish grew annoyed at his lack of response, feeling left out of the moment. Meanwhile, a person approached Hyun and handed her an umbrella as it began to rain. Hyun looked up at him, concerned, and asked what she should do now. The man replied that she couldn't do anything with the president involved, as he headed a 4-star company, and suggested that she return home. The fish then activated a light skill and positioned herself behind Shane to catch their attention. Hyun and her companion noticed the glowing light coming from the water. Shane moved closer to his wife and threw her a stick. Hyun caught the stick and approached the person with her, who was revealed to be her father. She excitedly told him that a fish had given her a stick. As they spoke, someone watched them from a distance and pulled out their phone to make a call. Back with Shane and the fish remarked that Shane could have made his wife help them. Shane, feeling a wave of sadness, replied that he couldn't do anything in this body. The fish reminded him that they needed to defeat all the bosses to return home. But Shane, needing some time to process everything, told her he needed to be alone, and swam away. Shane sat alone, feeling helpless in his fish body. He thought about what could help him defeat the bosses. Opening the system window, he checked the details of the boss he had killed, wondering if it was the strongest or weakest. He then opened the boss's page to see their names and recalled the names of all the fish he knew, remembering that a fish's name often reflects its characteristics. Shane spotted the name Junchi Kang and thought it would probably be the strongest among the bosses. He wondered where he could find it. As his head began to ache from overthinking, he called for the fish to leave. She reminded him that there were still eggs on the ground and that it would be wasteful to leave them, adding that she was hungry. Shane agreed, and the fish felt happy about that. As they walked, Shane asked the fish if she knew anything about the ecosystem of fish. She replied that she knew a little about fishing but nothing else. Shane realized that if he shared the eggs with the fish, it would slow his growth, so he rushed to eat them before she could. As he moved, he noticed a level 12 fish in front of him. The fish warned him to stay away, thinking he might eat her. At that moment, another fish approached to attack her, and Shane stood by, watching. His fish friend arrived, and Shane told her he felt he had seen this base fish before, suspecting it was one of the remaining survivors. He looked at the base and asked about the person she had hit, but she didn't respond. Shane's fish friend then pointed out that she knew the name because it was written above the fish. Ji-Hai-Si, the person who had kidnapped her. Ji-Hai-Si got up and the base fish lunged at him again. Shane remembered that this was the same base fish that had attacked him when he was small. As it charged once more, Shane activated his speed skill to strike first and used a whirlwind skill to throw it away. His fish friend watched from a distance, afraid to interfere in the fight. Shane noted that the whirlwind skill would be very useful for him. He saw the base fish fall to the ground and realized he had wasted half his life using the speed skill, which hadn't been effective. Determined, he moved to prey on the base fish and decided to use the predation skill to eat it. When he opened the system window, he discovered he could use the domination skill instead to make the fish his subordinate. Remembering this skill, he decided to give it a try. A message appeared, asking if he wanted to control this fish and informing him that he could only control 5 fish at a time. At that moment, Shane's fish friend and Ji-Hai-Si were locked in combat. Ji-Hai-Si attempted to reason with her, saying it wasn't him, but she demanded that he let her go. He insisted he didn't know this would happen, and claimed to be someone else, but the fish refused to listen, telling him to stay away. Shane rushed in and attacked Ji-Hai-Si, then turned to the fish and asked if she was okay. He questioned why she hadn't run away from him and instead stood there talking to him. Shane looked at Ji-Hai-Si and noticed he couldn't move and seemed very tired. However, Ji-Hai suddenly got up and told Shane that this wasn't fair. He explained to the fish that someone else had kidnapped her and that he had been in a hurry, so he took her in his car. The fish didn't believe him and angrily wished he would die. Ji-Hai was taken aback by her words. Shane then told Ji-Hai to leave the area. Ji-Hai began shouting that he meant well, but Shane attacked him again, warning him not to come near the fish ever again. Ji-Hai fell to the ground, repeatedly saying, "Hello!" He crawled closer to them, still uttering the same word. The fish was confused and didn't understand what was happening. Shane, feeling angry, turned to the fish and suggested that Ji-Hai might have a speech problem. He then asked her if she was sure it was Ji-Hai who had tried to kidnap her. She firmly replied that she was sure. Shane suggested they approach Ji-Hai as peaceful survivors and ask him to work together. However, the fish refused, stating that he had kidnapped her before and caused her to change into this form. She insisted she didn't want to see him again. Shane then asked her what they should do, explaining that if they left him behind, he would just follow them like an idiot. The fish replied that the best solution was to eat him. Ji-Hai was shocked by her words and began to cry, pleading that he didn't want to die. He then ran toward them, but Shane quickly moved in and struck him, inflicting a serious injury. Flashbacking to Ji-Hai's life before he became a fish, we see that he had a speech problem even then. A doctor had warned him that he would struggle to express what he wanted to say. Now Ji-Hai got up again, attempting to run toward them. Shane quickly activated his whirlwind skill to strike him once more. Ji-Hai lamented that all that was left of his life was misery. Returning to Ji-Hai's past, one night he heard noise coming from his building. Annoyed and unable to sleep, he went to confront the source of the disturbance. To his surprise, he found Shane's fish friend dancing on a live stream. Curious, Ji-Hai opened the stream and saw that there were only 6 viewers. Deciding it wasn't worth interrupting her, he turned around and went back to try to sleep. Ji-Hai advanced towards Shane and the fish once more. Shane quickly activated his whirlwind skill again, throwing Ji-Hai away and inflicting severe injuries. As he watched Ji-Hai struggle to get back up, up, Shane wondered how he could rise each time despite his injuries. Conflicted about his choices between the fish and Ji-Hai, Shane ultimately decided to side with the fish and considered eating Ji-Hai instead. As Shane approached Ji-Hai, a wave of memories flooded Ji-Hai's mind. He recalled a time in his previous life when he had brought food for the fish, helping her out because she wasn't making any money from her streams. He had tried to support her, thinking she deserved better. As Shane began to eat Ji-Hai, he decided to leave a small part of Ji-Hai behind. Suddenly, he felt a sharp pain coursing through his body. A system notification flashed before his eyes, informing him that he was infected with anchor worms. To his shock, he realized that the remaining part of Ji-Hai, his eye, was still alive. The fish approached Shane cautiously, trying to determine if he was alive or dead. As she drew closer, she received a system notification indicating that the fish in front of her was infected with fungi. Panic set in as she exclaimed that it must be a deadly disease. Remembering the eggs they had left behind, she quickly took Shane with her, intending to eat the eggs for sustenance. As they moved, a fish began to follow them, curious about what was happening. Meanwhile, we see two survivors sitting nearby. One of them, named Kim, who was at level 11, urged the other, Dong, who was at level 15, to lower his voice and slow down. They discussed the recent defeat of a boss, and expressed their determination to defeat a boss of their own soon. One of them asked the other what they would do if a big fish like the boss appeared in front of them and whether they could trust other survivors to be peaceful. His friend replied that they couldn't predict others' intentions and would only find out when they encountered them. Just then, another fish named Lily, level 11, joined them. Suddenly, a huge fish attacked Dong, triggering a notification for all survivors that a boss had encountered their group. Kim and Lily were terrified. In a moment of quick thinking, Dong activated a hardening skill that prevented the fish from swallowing him. He stuck his head out of the fish's mouth and urged his companions to escape, promising he would find them once he got out. However, they refused to leave him behind. Dong shouted at them to go, but they insisted on staying, unwilling to abandon their leader to be eaten. He warned them that he couldn't withstand the boss's teeth for long, and urged them again to flee. Finally, one of them managed to escape, but the other remained steadfast, determined to stay with Dong. Meanwhile, in another location, a wasp floated on the water's surface, only to be quickly devoured by a large basefish. Below the surface, a whole school of basefish feasted on small fish, creating a scene of chaos. Shane's fish friend was hiding nearby, terrified of being eaten as she watched the basefish consume their prey. She realized that this area led to where the eggs were located. Glancing at Shane, she warned him that if one of the base saw him, he would surely become their next meal. However, after a moment of thought, she reassured herself that Shane had grown into a big fish, and the base would likely ignore him in favor of the smaller fish. With that, she carried Shane and began to move toward the eggs. Another fish spotted them, but she continued on her path, determined to reach the eggs. As a fish approached them, intent on eating Shane and his friend, she quickly activated a level 1 light skill. She knew that using a level 2 skill would attract more fish, drawing them all around her. However, to her dismay, all the fish in the area were drawn to the light she produced. Looking ahead, she spotted bluegill fish, but they were level 10 and 11, posing a significant threat. Suddenly, a fish charged in and attacked the bluegills, revealing itself to be the same fish Shane had previously controlled. Seizing the opportunity, she decided to let this base fish defend them while they made their escape. She carried Shane and began moving in the opposite direction, but two fish that had turned away from the base followed them. As she started to run, she struggled with Shane's weight, making it difficult to move quickly. In a moment of desperation, she decided to hide and spotted a fishing net nearby. Recognizing it as the same net Shane had hidden in before, she quickly took him and entered the net for safety. Soon, fish began to gather around the net. One fish swam closer and looked at them from outside, urging them to leave and go away. As the fish started to disperse, it wasn't because of her words. They had simply given up on trying to enter the net. Once the area cleared, she carefully took Shane out of the net and headed toward the location of the eggs. Upon finally reaching the eggs, she tried to wake Shane so he could eat, but he didn't respond. Desperate, she gathered some eggs and placed them in his mouth, but he remained unresponsive. Feeling disheartened, she feared all her efforts had been in vain and worried that Shane might be dead. Nevertheless, she continued to place eggs in his mouth, hoping he would wake up. After a while, Shane began to stir and finally woke up, eagerly eating the eggs she had provided. Shane asked the fish if these were the same eggs the blue boss had been guarding. He also inquired how she managed managed to bring him here and how long he had been unconscious. She explained that she had gone through a big adventure to get him to this location and asked if he felt okay. Shane replied that he felt burns all over his body, that he was in his worst state, and that he didn't know how to cure the disease afflicting him. The fish suggested that if he ate more eggs, his level might increase and potentially cure his ailments. Shane considered this possibility, but realized he couldn't digest the eggs because of the fungal disease. The fish began to think about a cure for the fungi. Suddenly, Shane remembered that fishermen used to throw salt into freshwater lakes to eliminate fungi. He decided they needed to go to an area with high salinity. He explained to the fish that this lake connected to a river where freshwater met seawater, and he needed to go there because submerging his body in that water would kill the fungi due to its high salinity. She asked if a freshwater fish could survive in such a salty environment. Shane assured her that they would surely tolerate the saltiness better than the fungi, and once the fungi were gone, they could return to freshwater. He emphasized that they couldn't just wait in freshwater for someone to sprinkle salt on them. They needed to move quickly since he didn't have much time. As they made their way, they encountered a level 19 catfish, the same one that had swallowed the turtle. Thinking quickly, Shane used his whirlwind skill, striking the catfish and making it dizzy. They quickly hid behind a rock before the catfish could regain its senses. Meanwhile, rain began to fall, and the water level started to rise, forcing bottom-dwelling fish to ascend and hunt at higher levels. Shane urged the fish to move quickly before the catfish could find them. As they continued, they spotted a bucket and decided to hide inside it in case any other fish came looking for a meal. Shane asked the fish if she wanted to wait there for a while, but she reminded him that his fungal disease would worsen if they stayed put. Shane insisted that he still felt okay and could endure more, but the fish insisted they needed to keep moving, and he eventually agreed. As they walked, the fish asked Shane about fishing, assuming he must have gone often since he had been betrayed by his friend during a fishing trip. Shane replied that he rarely went fishing and thought it was easy. Just throw the rod in and wait for the fish to bite. Shane turned to the fish and asked about her hobbies before she became a fish. She replied that she had always dreamed of becoming a singer, but had failed because everyone left whenever she started singing. After leaving the singing agency, she tried to start on her own, but later decided to learn farming, only to fail at that as well. She continued, saying that she filmed some animal scenes and posted them online, which garnered some views. Encouraged by this, she decided to sing with animals, and those videos received a lot of attention. However, Shane could tell she was lying. She only had 6 viewers at that time. She mentioned that Jihai had left a fruit basket at her door, and she suspected he was eavesdropping on her. She had planned to bring this up in a live stream, but Jihai had kidnapped her, causing her to fall into the lake while trying to escape. As Shane listened to her story, he felt a nagging doubt about her honesty, sensing that there was more to her tale than she was letting on. Shane tells her they have 2 choices: defeat all the bosses or all the survivors. He mentions that one survivor, the crab, has skills much stronger than theirs. The fish argues that not all survivors are bad like him, and that there might be someone who wants to survive without harming others. However, she recalls the crab saying she would change her mind about cooperation when she met one of the monster survivors. Shane suggests the crab probably said that to scare her. The fish then asks Shane if they will stay in their current forms forever if they can't return to normal. Shane reassures her that they will return to their normal forms at the right time. Shane spots a boss called the Drought King, whose color has changed to red. He asks the fish if she knows anything about this boss, but she doesn't. When he inquires about other survivors, she suddenly mentions that she smells something strange. Shane identifies it as a foul odor and fears it might be bait. They look up and see a fishing boat, confirming that it is indeed the smell of bait. As the boat lowers an electric rod, they are shocked by what they see and decide to flee quickly. However, before they can finish their conversation, the rod releases electricity, stunning them and all the fish around them. They lose consciousness and float to the surface, where the fisherman collects all the fish using a fishing net. Shane found himself among the fish caught by the fisherman. However, when the fisherman noticed the fungi on Shane's body, he mistook him for a dead fish and threw him back into the water. As the fisherman pulled the net again, he discovered a golden fish among the catch. He excitedly told his companion that he had found a golden fish and asked if golden fish lived in this area. His companion replied that golden fish didn't typically inhabit this area, and that it was probably someone's pet that had been thrown into the lake. He urged the fisherman not to waste time talking, warning that the fish would wake up soon, and that he should work faster. The fisherman decided to keep the golden fish to give to his cousin. Back at the boss's office, the man who had turned Shane into a fish was sitting at his desk when one of his employees entered. The boss had ordered this employee to take care of Shane's wife, Hae-yoon, fearing she might expose their actions. The employee admitted he hadn't done anything about her yet, but was still keeping an eye on her. The boss's anger flared as he accused the employee of ignoring his orders. The employee explained that he sensed there were eyes on Hae-yoon and that she hadn't left the house for a while, making it difficult for him to act. This only fueled the boss's rage further. He reminded the employee that he was hired to obey orders and was being paid a substantial amount of money for this job. In a final warning, the boss instructed the employee to catch Hae-yoon and drown her in the same lake where Shane had been transformed. The employee replied that it would be very difficult to kidnap Hae-yoon from her house to drown her in the lake. He suggested it would be better to wait until she went out alone and headed to the lake, making it easier to get rid of her. The boss was furious at this response and struck the employee on the head with a golf club, calling him useless. Meanwhile, back at the lake, Shane was still unconscious but eventually woke up. Confused, he wondered what had happened to him and only recalled seeing a boat that released an electric wave. As he looked around, he noticed many fish and muttered that this was the work of illegal fishermen. Remembering that the golden fish had also been affected by the electric shock, he began searching for her in the lake. At that moment, the fishermen finished their work and headed to the area where they collected the fish. The golden fish was among the catch. One fisherman took it and washed it, intending to give it to his cousin. Another fisherman remarked on the fish's beauty but warned that it would likely die within a few days if kept, as this type of fish needed to live in a tank from a young age. When the golden fish finally woke up, she found herself surrounded by fishermen who were cutting and cleaning other fish. She opened her eyes and saw a catfish in front of her, initially frightened and thinking she was still in the lake. However, she quickly realized that someone had taken this catfish as well. The other fisherman had placed her in a container with some other fish while loading the rest of the catch into the truck. The fisherman who intended to give the golden fish to his cousin realized it was missing from the box. He asked the other fisherman about it, who replied that he had placed it in a container full of water to keep it alive. The first fisherman went to check but couldn't find the fish. He assumed the other fisherman had thrown it back into the water, but the other insisted he was certain it was still in the container. Meanwhile, the golden fish had jumped out of the container and was making her way toward the lake, which was quite far away. This was a struggle for her, as she couldn't survive long out of water. While she was jumping, she heard a terrifying sound and turned to see a large cat behind her. Frightened, she called out for Shane to come and save her. Hearing her cries, Shane activated his speed skill and raced toward the edge of the lake where she was. Hae-yoon was watching the news when she received a call from her mother, who urged her to stop searching for Shane, fearing it would lead to trouble. Shocked, Hae-yoon asked if her mother was suggesting she leave Shane. Her mother clarified that wasn't her intention, but expressed concern for her safety. Hae-yoon insisted she was willing to take risks for Shane and would continue her search. Determined, she got into her car and asked her mother to take care of Yugo, her daughter, as she headed to the lake to look for Shane. Meanwhile, the red crab had leveled up and muttered to himself that he needed to advance quickly to finish everything, as he didn't have much time left. Hae-yoon continued her conversation with her mother, who was desperately trying to convince her to let go of Shane and move on. Her mother reminded her that Yugo kept asking about her, adding to Hae-yoon's guilt. Hae-yoon replied that she was heading to a place Shane used to frequent, hoping to find any news about him. Her mother urged her to come home because it was getting late, but Hae-yoon firmly stated that she wasn't a child anymore and wouldn't return home just yet. She ended the call, determined to follow her instincts. As she drove, she reassured herself that she had found strong evidence and needed to confirm whether Shane was alive or dead. Suddenly, a car swerved dangerously close to hers, nearly causing a crash. Hae-yoon's heart raced as she regained her focus on the road, her resolve to find Shane stronger than ever. Back at the lake, Shane reached the edge and called for the golden fish, but she was nowhere to be found. Determined, he decided to surface for a better look. He emerged from the water and called for her again, but there was still no response. Puzzled, he wondered about the sound he had heard earlier, and if she might be on the shore. Then, he noticed a light shining in the distance and felt certain that the fish was there, as the light was one of her skills. Indeed, it was the golden fish who emitted the light, which attracted the cat's attention. As her health decreased, she began rolling toward the lake, the cat hot on her trail. She started to bleed from the attacks. The cat approached and struck her again, pushing her closer to the water's edge. With her health nearly gone, she glanced beside her and spotted a fish head discarded by the fisherman. She thought it could distract the cat long enough enough for her to escape, but with her weak health, the golden fish could barely move a finger. She looked around and noticed many fish heads nearby. Trying to distract the cat, she told it that the heads were delicious, but the cat was determined to eat her specifically. In a moment of desperation, she claimed that when she became human again, she would come to teach him a lesson. However, as the cat got closer, she quickly changed her tune, saying she would bring him fish soup instead. She pleaded with him to stay away, but the cat didn't understand her fish talk. Realizing her end was near as the cat approached, the golden fish felt a wave of despair. Just as the cat was about to eat her, Shane appeared and used his whirlwind skill to strike the cat, leaving a wound on its face and pushing it away from her. However, the impact sent both Shane and the golden fish tumbling onto the shore. The cat, now furious, looked at them and decided it would eat them both. We see one of the survivors named Lily, who was at level 9, standing in front of the red crab. The crab swiftly devours her, increasing its level and receiving a notification that it has eliminated one of the survivors. Meanwhile, Shane and the golden fish lie on the ground as the cat approaches, ready to eat them. Shane tells the fish he will try to create a chance for them to escape and asks if she can move. She replies that her health is very low and she can't move at all. Shane contemplates what to do, realizing that the golden fish could become a liability. The fish looks at Shane and urges him to escape and save himself. Although she felt a surge of happiness seeing him come to her aid, she believed it would be better for one of them to survive. She didn't want to be a burden that could lead to his death. Shane quickly tells the golden fish he has an idea. He activates his speed skill and collides with her, pushing her closer to the shore. However, the cat attacks Shane, nearly catching him in its jaws. Despite the danger, Shane manages to get the fish into the water, but now he needs to find a way to escape. Looking at the cat, he mutters to himself, "Who would have thought my end would be at the hands of a cat?" The cat strikes him, but Shane realizes the hit wasn't very strong. He wonders if the cat is just playing with him. As the cat places its paw on Shane's tail, he seizes the opportunity and activates his speed skill, attempting to throw himself into the lake, but the cat strikes him again, preventing him from reaching the water and causing Shane's health to decrease. Shane mutters that this cat is annoying and decides it's better to distract it with something. He throws one of the fish heads nearby to keep the cat busy while he makes his escape. However, the cat shows no interest in the fish head and moves towards Shane again. Frustrated, Shane activates his whirlwind skill to attack the cat, but as he does, thoughts of his daughter distract him, causing him to lose focus. His attack fails to affect the cat, and he falls to the ground, bewildered about what the cat wants from him. Meanwhile, a crow flies toward the lake, intent on catching the golden fish, who has just regained consciousness and is looking around to see if Shane has entered the water as well. She spots the crow approaching, but before it can reach her, a giant fish suddenly appears and devours the crow in one swift motion. Back to Shane. He told himself that he would endure the cat's hits to reach the lake. This was his last chance. His energy was running low, and he wouldn't be able to use his speed skill again. If he did, the cat would hit him once more, completely depleting his energy. He needed to escape from the cat quickly before things got worse. Then, Shane noticed that the cat was distracted by something. Seizing the opportunity, he decided to either use his speed skill or crawl toward the lake. He carefully made his way down the slope, heading for the water. The cat spotted him, but Shane managed to enter the lake just before it could reach him. As he submerged in the water, Shane felt a surge of happiness, but then thoughts of his daughter flooded back. He reminded himself that he shouldn't think about others right now and focused on finding the golden fish. He began swimming through the water, calling out for her. Meanwhile, the golden fish faced the giant fish, which spoke to her. The giant fish revealed that it was once human too. It explained that despite having the power to eliminate the other survivors, it chose not to. When it spotted her, it recognized her name and decided to help her by eating the crow. The golden fish thanked the giant fish for its assistance and asked if it was one of the survivors. The giant fish confirmed that it was and reminded her that it had already mentioned this. Curious, the giant fish asked how long ago she had transformed into a fish. She replied that she didn't know the exact time and hadn't kept track of the days, but it might have been 6 weeks or more. The giant fish warned her that as she aged, she would forget her friends, family, and possibly even her own name. It shared that it had transformed long ago and believed it was the first to do so in this lake. The giant fish recounted its tragic experience experiences, explaining that it had forgotten its friends and family and couldn't recall anything about its old life. It expressed uncertainty about whether it would ever remember them again. The golden fish asked the giant fish how it had transformed. The giant fish explained that it had come fishing one day, but something happened and it turned into a fish. Unfortunately, it couldn't remember the details of that transformation. It then asked the golden fish if she remembered her friends, family, and anything from her old life. She replied that she remembered everything, including the person who had caused her transformation into a fish, who had also turned into a fish. The giant fish then inquired if she wanted to return to being human again, and if she had a home to go back to. The golden fish expressed her desire to return to her human form, saying she wanted to go home and reunite with her family, because she no longer wished to eat fish food. The giant fish asked her again if she truly wanted to return to being human. She responded emphatically, "Of course," and asked why it kept repeating the question. The giant fish told her that she needed to kill the other survivors, but it was lying. In truth, it was the one that had eaten the turtle before. Its plan was to incite the survivors against each other and eat the last one remaining, allowing it to return to being human effortlessly. The golden fish asked if it wanted her to kill the other survivors. The giant fish confirmed and asked if she had a friend there. She replied that her friend's name was Shane. The giant fish warned her not to trust that Shane wouldn't betray her if they became the last two survivors, urging her to kill him now to increase her chances of becoming human again. She refused, insisting that she had spent a long time with him and didn't want to kill any survivors, believing there were other ways out of this situation. The giant fish clarified that it wasn't asking her to kill anyone, but was showing her the best way to survive, having made similar mistakes in the past. It warned that if no one killed her, she would end up living alone in this desperate lake. When she asked if that could really happen, it confirmed, insisting it wasn't lying about her friend potentially betraying her in the end, using her as a tool to eliminate the other survivors before finally turning on her. Meanwhile, Shane was still searching for the golden fish. Frustrated with the parasites, he thought he needed to go somewhere salty to eliminate them, but he didn't want to leave without her. He returned to the spot where he had thrown her, looking left and right, hoping she might be hiding from predators and would appear soon. However, he began to struggle to breathe due to the parasites, and the current had grown stronger. He wondered what was causing the strong current, suspecting that the factory was dumping waste into the lake. Shane struggled to catch his breath, so he decided to leave the water to rid himself of the parasites and then return to fight the remaining bosses. He thought the waste might contain salts that could help him, so he resolved to walk against the current. It was challenging, but he pressed on through the waters, determined to escape the waste and continue his search for the golden fish. Meanwhile, the golden fish was still conversing with the giant fish, which was trying to persuade her to kill all the survivors before she forgot her memories. She insisted that she couldn't do that and came up with a plan to preserve her memories. She would share her memories with Shane so he could remind her when they became human again, and she would do the same for him. The giant fish pointed out that only the person who made a wish could return to being human, and if she and Shane defeated all the bosses, Shane would receive that wish. She acknowledged this, realizing that only one of them could claim the wish, despite their struggles together. The golden fish asked the giant fish how it could be so sure that only one person would return to being human if it had forgotten all its memories. She demanded to know its true identity. The giant fish replied that there was no point in continuing the conversation, insisting it had answered all her questions, but she remained determined to take the difficult path. Just then, the golden fish received a notification that one of the survivors was fighting a boss. Meanwhile, Shane recalled a memory of his wife asking him what he would do early that day and reminding him that he should rest. He wondered about his current location, and she asked if he no longer knew his home and if work had made him forget his life. She reminded him that he was supposed to go fishing with a work friend that day. Shane thought he might be dreaming, but he questioned how it could be a dream when he remembered everything so clearly. His wife called him for breakfast, but Shane didn't respond. She asked if he didn't want to eat, and he replied that he felt he didn't like the meal. She reminded him that he loved it and that she had made it for him several times, but he had been forgetting a lot lately. Suddenly, Shane heard a strange voice saying, "I'm hungry." He turned to his wife and asked if she had said something, but she insisted she hadn't. He insisted she had said she was hungry, but she denied it, expressing concern that he had been hallucinating lately. She told him she had been talking to him since morning, but he wasn't listening or paying attention. She was starting to worry because he seemed to be in another world. Shane told himself that everything happening was just a dream. His wife asked what he was talking about, and he replied that when he turned into a fish, no one looked for him except her. She was confused and asked what he meant by turning into a fish. He then reflected that he used to believe money was the solution to all problems, but he realized it was just an illusion. He thought he was a perfect man doing everything right, but he recognized he was wrong about that too. Shane apologized to his wife for being too busy with work and not caring for her and their daughter. He had thought the money he earned would fulfill their needs, but he now understood he was mistaken. He suggested they go on a trip together to escape the work atmosphere and reconnect. Suddenly, Shane transformed back into his fish form, and a fish was eating him.